live.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining. Let's close our committee of the whole meeting for Monday, June 16th, 2025. We're now opening and calling to order our special council meeting of Monday, June 16th, 2025 to order. And again, acknowledging gratitude that we live and work on traditional unceded territory of the Squamish. These people have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding Lillooet, Bowen Island. And first up, moving forward, is approval of the agenda. I will look to the corporate officer for the introduction of the 8 items today.
Yes, there are 3 late items, and it's letters sent by email this afternoon. Paving items appointment.
So with that, I will look for a motion to approve the agenda and late items for the June 16th special council meeting, moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion on the agenda? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand. Say aye. 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 That carries unanimously. Looking to the corporate officer for any public comments today.
We have none registered for public comments. I don't see any. No.
Not online. Okay. And with that, we'll move on to section 3, business arising from the minutes, which brings us here today. 3.1, additional paving requirements for waterworks and culvert replacement projects. We are returning to this item, or this item was deferred from our previous regular council meeting with the absence of our CAO and the need to have some more information on reporting this as a change request versus sending it out to tender given the change of scope of work in the project. And I will turn it over to staff for any comments before we begin the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I listened to the presentation last would have been a week ago, and so I understand some of the concerns that were raised during this discussion. Ultimately, deferring this to deciding whether it would make sense to retender this. So based on my experience, you know, I have led a payment program in another jurisdiction for 5 years. Retendering does generally not result in lower costs to do it that way. We do have so asphalt is usually linked to what's called the rack rate for oil, asphalt binder. In this case, it's PG 58-28 binder, which means it's binder that's going to be between plus 58 degrees Celsius and minus 28, right? That's what we use here. And so it would be subject to the crude oil prices. I don't think world events and demands right now are conducive to lower oil prices in the next 2 months. So we have a competitive price for this that was in terms of reasonability. Staff went out and they solicited a quote to see if this is in the realm of what's reasonable, and it was determined to be reasonable. I believe if we were to retender, we would be looking at essentially a 1 month delay in process, and then we'd be subject to the availability of asphalt contractors, which at this time of year are kind of busy. So we could be potentially scheduled in around October. That's a tenuous time of year. You could see rain, and as was the experience with the Bowen Island Community Center, who we were booked in for October, but the weather conditions didn't allow for it, so we ended up having to put that off until April the following year. And I think that's a risk we run with this here. I believe if we were to retender it hypothetically, if there was some savings, that savings would be eaten up quite quickly by the fact that we would have to maintain a gravel road, applying dust suppression in the form of calcium chloride and using public works hours to deal with that road. And it's we have received comments from residents there that it's quite dusty. So we would be having to apply the calcium chloride, maintain it. Right now, because this is part of the works of NB Contracting, they are responsible for maintaining the gravel road. But if we were to pull any portion of the paving out of it, right now they were just supposed to do the trenches they would say, okay, well, we'll go in, we'll do our pipe work that we need to, and then after that, it's gravel road. It's up to you, Bowen Island, to look after that until you pave it. So we would have to deal with that, and it's it could be a long time before we end up paving that, just based on contractor availability and weather conditions that we'll see in fall. So we have a shovel-ready project. We have a price, we have a contractor that's willing to execute the work in short order. Council did keep the tax rate at 9.5% to put towards renewing our infrastructure. We have a $90 million infrastructure deficit here. And so this project would address, be one more asset that we repair, and just so that we understand where the money's coming from. So the roads function is something the municipality provides island-wide. It's not put on a specific local area service. This would have been a road that we would have repaired anyways as part of our road rehabilitation program. It was in poor condition, so doing it this time is going to save costs and result in less disruption to residents to do it right after the work. So that's cases I presented in terms of this. So open up to any questions.
We asked Rachel to put down in her call, but she had in her presentation the last time.
Have that handy?
Yes, I do. That one at the bottom. So which one is privateer and which one's forecast, because they're not labeled?
The one beside Clipper Place.
Yeah.
For the chair, sorry, that would be Privateer.
Okay, and then Forecastle is the one at the very end of the loop. Okay, now, Captain's Way is not mentioned in the resolution, but there's a red line on Captain's Way. And it was certainly dug up when I was there the other day. So is that intended to be paved as well? Well, we've got a new resolution in our package. Yeah, so it's.
So just for clarity, the resolution refers to Windjammer Road, Spyglass Road, Clipper Place, Privateer Road, and Forecastle. So I think the question is whether that chunk on the bottom left of Captain's Way is to be included.
Yes. So we need to add Captain's Way. And I guess just for clarity, the way it's reading right now, full paving of Windjammer implies to me that you're gonna go back to where Windjammer starts and start paving there. So, but what we should be saying is full road width paving. Because that's what we're doing, we're paving the full width of the road, right? And maybe it should just say full road width paving for portions of Windjammer and Captain's Way. Because we're not paving the whole of either of those roads. So that would, and then Spyglass. It's all of Spyglass, but for Privateer markets. I don't know whether we need 10, but all of
I think that addition will add more clarity to the resolution.
Councilor Saunders?
Thank you, through the chair. A question from the, surprised I didn't notice this last time, maybe I'm just misreading, but in the staff report in background, it says that NB contractor's original scope addressed only trans-Pacific paving requiring asphalt tie-ins with the existing chip seal. Achieving durable tie-ins between asphalt and chip seal is nearly impossible and would likely lead to premature failure. And yet, so that reads to me, and again, correct me if I'm, reads to me like the only plan was to approach it this way, and it was unachievable. But and maybe I'm just reading it wrong, but that's, it seems like this says, so we were gonna do this, by the way, it's unachievable, so now we have to repay.
Yeah, through the chair, so I mean, new people come in, and out of organizations. I come from a background in pavement and design, and when I looked at the chip seal plan, I mean, maybe they was thinking that it was achievable. I can tell you right now, if you're trying to tie chip seal into asphalt.
Yeah.
Like you need a good bond between those to make it work, and it won't work between chip seals. Like it's basically an emulsion put over gravel and it sets up, and so it's gonna be nothing but problems there. So I mean, I'm not I don't want to critique past engineering, but I mean, as somebody who has a background in this and I've seen the bad results of work, this is the best way to move forward.
So just follow up then, thanks. I'm not gonna question your engineering on this. I believe you when you say this is the best way to do it. It just reads to me like we knew that and we did it anyway. We went forward this way anyway. Or is this actually, once you came on board, and this preceded you, as I recall, once you came on board, you looked at this and went, this isn't gonna work, which that makes more sense to me, actually.
Hang on, we got a speakers list, so it's got Councillor Saunders, followed by Councillor Getty, and then Councillor Morrison. And I'll let the CAO.
Yeah, there was a question on the phone, and excuse me, you had a.
Yeah.
A follow-up.
Thanks.
That's all right. We have placed asphalt on chip seal before
Right,
successfully
okay,
on Mount Gardner and on Conley Road. We tied it with the tack coat to chip seal, so it's not that we knew from the project planning that this was not feasible.
Okay.
It has been feasible, yes.
okay, thank you.
Councillor Getty, followed by Councillor Morrison.
I had the same questions as Councillor Saunders at the previous hearing, but I'm wondering now if we need to have another look at the Eagle Cliff connection to it. It's there once the pipes are in the ground, and if we're trenching, we're about half of the road that it's going to have gravel and the other half that's got some sort of chip seal that can't. So if you know, in terms of the difference of opinion in terms of engineering and other experience in that, if this two questions in terms of, you know, project creep and the change in the original scope, so that, and that one question in terms of tie-ins, durable tie-ins are impossible, that didn't stick out, but the other, and whether or not that's another problem that we haven't properly dealt with in the, I'm very curious now. What that whole project is about. And we haven't discussed that in terms of this part of this program. But for this one, I'm also wondering, one of the things that was raised at the last meeting was that if we're putting down X number of centimeters of gravel, we're not taking off the chip seal, we're putting down more gravel, and then we're putting a layer of asphalt on top of that. And there's a distinction between I think the Monarch quote was less asphalt, and this is, so we're building up the roadway, I think it's a total of 6 inches. And there was questions in terms of, we've got a narrow roadway, we've got steep, we don't have shoulders, it's even steeper now. Is there potentially a longer term problem with this kind of engineering or technology that we're suggesting is, you know, we can finish this project and we can meet these economic concerns, but are we creating a different problem in terms of when this surface deteriorates, should we have taken it all off? And, you know, that's a different project, I realize, and it's a different time frame. But if we're now scraping off the chip seal on the other side or adding on top of it, are we creating another problem for 10, 20 years down the road that's going to come back and bite us? At different prices and, you know, all of this.
Yeah, so through the chair, so what the process will be is there's existing chip seal there now that has some gravel included in that. that gets ripped and scarified into the new road surface, and another 100 mils of gravel gets added onto that, and you add your 65 mils. So I was trying to think of, well, what does 6 inches look like? This pen is roughly 6 inches, right? So that's what we're adding. So, and then once you do that, there's going to be a little bit of field fitting to feather in the transitions into the existing aprons, the driveway entrances. In some cases, it's going to be an improvement because as I look through the images here, like we have several encroachments, like there's stairs going into, tying right into the road. So I don't believe we're gonna be, if anything, we're gonna be strengthening the structure of the road and thickening the asphalt there. This road will last 25 years, if not longer. And having it at 65 mils, it allows for, in the future, if we do replace it at the end of its design life, we can mill down the surface 30 millimeters and then put in just a topping on that. So it makes it easier. You can't, with chip seal, you have to rip it up and scarify it, but with asphalt, you can mill it down, and we see that in the city all the time when we drive around city streets and they're being done. So they, so yeah, you know, with regards to that, we are adding structure. We're not taking away structure, so we'll end up with a stronger, more robust road.
Going back to Councillor Saunders' question, I took the further deterioration range concerns about trench patching along with fill, because what I was understanding from that paragraph was that they were gonna pave the trench. And then, but how are you gonna tie the paving of the trench to the seal coat? And therefore, you pave over both the seal coat where you put the binder down first, and then you're got the asphalt on the trench, and you've got a nice asphalt surface. So I got it right.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So you can put asphalt over seal coat, which we've done on the Northlands, but
Yeah, just through the chair, yeah, you can pave over chips, that's different, but that's a different thing than trying to
Yeah.
marry two transverse joints together.
Yeah.
Or longitudinal joints, right? So that's where it gets very difficult. You end up with cracking, and eventually that chip seal is gonna start degrading. You know, at where the crack happens between the asphalt and the chip seal, or just, you know, further.
bigger problems.
Thank you. To the chair. The engineering part, I think you've explained extremely well. And if I get why we want to get this done, I guess my only question is, and layman here who doesn't know much about contracting for asphalt and roads, although lots of other things. Are you satisfied? Like when I looked at those quotes, they're for an apple here and an orange there. And that's the way it appeared to me. And we had a discussion about this last time. And then I guess my question to you, to the CAO, is, are you satisfied that those quotes are representative of what we were looking for here? And I guess I'm putting you on the spot there with that, but.
Certainly through the chair, I think that the intent of the quote from Monarch was to see if the rates were being quoted for asphalt are reasonable and in line with industry standards. I think, you know, in the case of Monarch, I'm not fully aware of their capabilities, but I know we did help them with their public works crew to do the base prep before they paved. So they're essentially just placing the pavement and packing it. But in this case, the job is just way too big for our public works to do that. So they would need to bring in an external subcontractor to probably help them with that portion of it. But in this case, it's all being done under the auspices of general contractors. So you know, they'll deal with the tight plating and all the work that's required to so that the paver can come in and lay down their pavements. So yeah, if the question is, am I satisfied with the quotes? Yes, and that's why we did ask Urban Systems to look at them both and try and get them a little bit more apples to apples, although that's a little bit difficult with the earthworks part not being in it, but, you know, I've also, the BC Road Builders Association puts out, you know, the asphalt index to give you some idea of what the oil rat rate is these days, so we can use that to see if we're in the ballpark. And so, this is in the ballpark, and I just received a new analysis today that says the rate we're quoted in this change order is actually less than some of the, you know, the unit rates they had for just small patches. Because, you know, small patches require, like, you don't get the economy of scale of a small patch that you get with a bigger job, so I believe for all this reason, we're getting a good price for this.
Thank you. Just some questions. So some questions I have are, I suppose just following up on what Councillor Saunders is asking around the PC or durable tie-ins between asphalt and chip seal is nearly impossible. Was this approach part of urban systems design, or was this approach a requirement that we put into the tender?
Through the chair, so me not being there at the time, it was, all this stuff was tendered, I'm only, I hate speculating on the reasons, but I could see, from my perspective, the only rationale would be cost cutting. It's a way to reduce the cost of the overall project. But since then, council's made a firm commitment to investing in our infrastructure and talking over reserves. So, I mean, and I'm only speaking for myself, is if I was to tender this, I would have had it for full width paving when we put out the tender, but you know, there's always time to fix things and make things better, and I think in this case, we're gonna get a much more superior product if we pave the entire width up the road as opposed to just a trench and trying to tie that into chip seal. So yeah, I'm only speculating, but I'm guessing that it was due to a sensitivity to cost.
Okay. You know, I guess I ask, and I'm treading here, open meeting, we're possibly going to close at this point, but there's the, so as I drive those roads, you know, we're talking about hundreds of meters of roads here, so it's not necessarily a patch, and the trenches go from one side of the road to the other side of the road. Sometimes the whole road is decimated in points. And I think even if we went with a trench patching, or basically like a half road paving through the neighborhood, it would have looked not great. And then, you know, would have left at least half of the road up with this chip seal that, you know, is already old and aging. So I'm just curious, I think, given the procurement of this project, you know, it went out to tender, it was bundled with Eagle Cliff, which has created some issues for us. I know that the tender itself had, you know, 6 to 8 addendums to it as it went on. Whether this approach, which represents a change order of $750,000, is significant to the project, whether this was advocated to us as the design piece that came out of urban systems, or was a requirement that we ourselves put in and got ourselves into. Is that a question that can be answered in any way? Or was it a back and forth with urban systems?
Through the chair, I would have to do more investigation to find out the context of that. And it's an interesting thing post-mortem, and definitely needs some lessons to be learned and incorporated for future projects. But I think at this point, as somebody who's still relatively simple and trying to suggest a course of action that I think is best for that neighborhood, and focus on the future here. And like as I run through it in my mind, like how, I just have questions on how you would even clear snow from that kind of scenario. You have asphalt, you have this joint, you have a chip seal, trying to clear snow off that. I mean, I think you would just rip up the edges where the trench line is, and so. I think there's challenges in it, and so we have an opportunity now, because we haven't done the work. To do this the right way, and so that's what we presented forward. Is to try and do this the right way.
Absolutely, yeah, and I agree. I think paving the whole road without question is a necessity, having, driven by there and seen the condition of it. And I know we're getting claims at this point from folks who are possibly experiencing damage to their vehicles. However, I don't think the point can be understated that in terms of a project, and this is sort of from my view as a mayor here, this is like a rural road with some water mains, gravel, asphalt that went to design. We came back with this, and we've experienced some significant issues with the way that it was bundled as a tender, and now with a significant change request that's asking us to spend $750,000 additional dollars. And I would put somewhat forcefully, and again, knowing that we came in well after this was tendered and underway, that there's something feels embedded in our procurement where this could have been avoided, and a decision like this, and some of the decisions related to this project, seen in advance. That said, the other point that I'd like to highlight, which feels salient to me, is that I remember that we experienced a lot of pushback from the community about NB being the low bidder, and they significantly came under budget, and would they be able to do the work? And I think NB in and of itself has done a great job on schedule and on time, and certainly on budget with this project. So far, so I don't have any issues with them as a contractor doing the work. However, some of our the way we've gone about doing this work and some of the challenges that have arisen, I think need to give us pause, particularly when we're moving forward with new projects. I had share the same questions that Councillor Getty has: is are we going to run into these paving issues with the Eagle Cliff portion of the project as well? And if that can be answered presently. Is that something that will anticipate?
I mean, perhaps with the assistance of Rachel, I would say if there's existing asphalt, in this case, it was a chip seal road. I trying to think of what the road is up to Eagle Cliff, but I believe it's asphalt based on my recollection, but perhaps Rachel can confirm.
The chair, I believe the water main construction will be constructed primarily in the shoulder to avoid having to do a lot of repaving.
Okay. Yeah, at one point, I believe they were talking about doing it down the middle of the road. I think that was something that we talked about at the mayor's task force at one point. So I think it's worth asking and asking Urban Systems, particularly if this was a design issue and it was Urban Systems that recommended this to us. I have questions about that selection of design. Should it be strictly a design issue to begin with? The other question I have is related to, if we move forward with this as it's written here, it'll be approved as a change order to the existing contract. Is that right?
That's correct.
My understanding. And just with the use of BA Blacktop, I know they've done work on the island before. I haven't been intimately involved in that work, but I know that we, as a resident prior to getting elected, I believe that they did some of the work down in Stump Cove a couple of summers ago that took out a lane down there and resulted in some major congestion. There were other pieces that I spectated on the Bowen Bay route that I'd be curious about their ability as well as availability to the project as well. So I guess my final question is, if this is a change order, is this an order that we can process that ties a specific start finish date to this work? I know the BA Blacktop is busy. I understand that they have some huge projects going on in the region as well. And my worry would be that Bowen Island gets forgotten about or gets delayed or has equipment pulled to finish things at YBR or in some of the metropolitan areas.
Yeah, thanks for the question through the chair. So in terms of schedule availability, what we've been told based on NV providing us information is that they would be available to do this in July. NV and BA Blacktop work together on other projects. You know, they have a working relationship from the Sunshine Coast. In terms of the quality, that is a component in the pricing. It's built into that change order, is that there's going to be third-party testing of the asphalt. There's going to be inspection work done. And if there is an issue with quality and they don't meet specifications, having it done through a general contractor is going to provide that extra layer of assurance that we deal with the general contractor on those things. If we were to contract directly with a paving company, then we would be dealing with them. So really it's going to be up to NB also. They have a stake in this to make sure that this is executed properly. And we should get a warranty, like there's a warranty with this work too that comes. So this work is warranted for a year after it's been laid down. So that's an additional protection for the municipality on the product we get in terms of the asphalt. Whether we can get this embedded in the change order, they are required with every change order to provide a schedule update to us that's approved. So it should be captured in that schedule update. I'll check, I'll have to check with Urban if we can actually strengthen that to have a firm schedule date, but you know, as it was experienced on the building we're in right now, I mean, schedule commitments are made and then, you know, extenuating circumstances can happen and then you have to provide an extension. So I believe that because a lot of the main works and waterworks are wrapping up for NV, that they're motivated to get this done now because they want to keep their crews busy and they are hoping to work on the Eagle Cliff work at some point too. So I think this actually fits in nicely with their progression of work on this project. And beyond that, I can't provide a more specific answer, but more than willing to take into like follow-up questions on that. But that is my belief that they will be here in July.
Someone's checking it out.
Yeah. Thanks. To the chair, I guess my last question is that is pointed out by the mayor, $750,000 change order. What's the opportunity cost of that? Are there any high priority projects that are going to have to get put aside because this money is going elsewhere, or is this sort of it's been accounted for? Like I know the money's budgeted, but are we putting something aside that is equal priority in order to get this done?
Thanks again for the question. So right now, in terms of our asset management program, it's in its infancy. And so what we don't have and what we're working towards, we've actually submitted a grant funding opportunity for this, is to have a pavement condition assessment of our whole road network and have a capital plan for roads and when we're going to repair them. But in the absence of that, we've been paving roads based on their condition. And based on what's being observed on the island, this particular road was in really bad conditions. So on that basis, I would say it was a top tier candidate for paving. On the opportunity costs, I guess it would be another road that we would potentially pay, but I can't think, and I'll defer to Rachel because she gets the information directly from Public Works, is whether there would be that being another road that maybe is in worse condition than this one that would warrant paving, but based on the photos in the report, I can't think of a road that's worse condition than that one. So.
No, that's great.
Not to say they're not out there.
No, but this one's bad. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
That's right. Oh, sorry, Councilor Getty, followed by Councilor Whitney.
At some point, I'm prepared to make this recommendation, move the recommendation as amended with respect to addresses, but I think that we put the money aside in the reserve fund and we still have a little bit left over so that if we've got some emergency repairs, nothing the size of this project, but if what we end up with is a better road that is not going to be subject to the difficulties and the degradation in terms of trying to go with the original tender. The other question was whether or not this should go back out to a larger tender, and I think that that's maybe not financially the best step for us to take at this point. That we're not gonna get ourselves into trouble with respect to a change order, and that we just bite the bullet, get this one done, and be really more mindful in terms of not setting ourselves up for having this kind of problem in the future.
Councilor Whitty?
On the subject of what might get missed, I believe Rachel said last time, one of the roads was Jason Road. And I had a look at that the other day as I drove by, and I mean, it's not bad. It's not that bad, so I don't know what the other one was.
Portion of Taylor Road.
And you forgot Fairwood. The 75 bottles that just got filled. And Beach Drive.
Councilor Morris, Councilor Lake has the floor.
I think it's very clear that our CAO has a lot of experience with this stuff, and he's made a pretty strong case that our best move is to go ahead and pave it, which frankly is what I was deducing from last time, but with far less information. So I'd be prepared to make the motion, but Councilor Getty can go ahead and I'll second it.
Yes,
I just, I want to address that issue through the chair of the concerns around the road width and the geometry. I mean, if we were to rebuild that road, it would be like, take it down. First of all, it'd be physically impossible. We have encroachments, we have very steep slopes. It is a very tight place to build a road, and we would never be able to achieve the guidelines that the Transportation Association of Canada. These are, logging roads that were essentially paved and people built houses, right? So that would be very challenging to do. So this is the best solution, is it's going to provide a durable, smooth road surface for vehicles to drive on. And at the end of the day, we are going to have to feel fit things to make it work. Just drive up there. There's stairs that are coming right down to the road that are within a right of way. So it is a challenging place to work for sure.
So before turning it over to Councilor Getty, just for clarity, my last question would be, so if this motion is approved, when would we be looking to see this paving start, and when would we anticipate it being complete?
So through the chair, if this was to be adopted by council today, the next step would be to go ahead and issue the change order and get the schedule back from NB. Now, some time has passed since they last gave us our change order pricing and schedule, but if you can hold to what they originally proposed, then we're expecting it would start within a week and be concluded by the end of July.
Sure.
But I'm obviously throwing some caveats in there because contractors have a very busy schedule in summer, and especially paving ones. They can have other jobs come into the mix if they aren't secured within a certain time frame. So I should be able to report back to council on that schedule.
Okay, so for clarity then, So if the main intention of not going to tender is to save time, then my belief is that those dates need to be put in a performance-based way into that change order. Because what the residents would not tolerate would be skipping a procurement process to save time and then having a project that stretches into October, either through a delay of completion or a delay of start, or both. So if the intention is to save time, then that time savings needs to be guaranteed in some way, shape, or form in the change order. Otherwise, waiting a month and putting it out to tender and seeing what we get back doesn't really matter. If we're just going to experience delays in the contractor's ability to complete the work.
Yes.
Councilor Morris.
So if I heard CEO correctly, they will start within a week, so this is June. Or what, 16th, so they start on June 23rd, and it's gonna take them 40 odd days to pay the whole thing.
Well, it's not just the paving through the chair, it's also the waterworks that need to get done first to put them in a position. to pave,
Well, I thought they
right?
were finished in water.
That's still ongoing.
There's some.
Because they needed to know before doing the waterworks, are we just paving this trench or are we doing the whole thing? So, yeah, they would need to do that and then, but they can move pretty quickly on the waterworks, so that's the timeline we've been given. To address an earlier question that the mayor asked you about the time is one thing, the benefit of doing it this way, but I believe it's also savings. We're gonna re-tender, and it's gonna be tied to crude oil prices. That's the price of asphalt is based on crude oil prices, and then just looking at world events and factor that we're in summer demand, and I'm not necessarily sure that we're going to get a cheaper price if there's out there by re-tendering.
What was the address change? Adding Captain's Way?
Yeah, so it's adding Captain's Way
And putting in full road width.
in full road, so I can read it out. As I do. The council approved the use of $250,000 from the roads and infrastructure reserve fund to supplement the use of $500,000 from the road improvements budget for the full road width paving, Jammer Road, Spyglass Road, Clipper Place, Privateer Road, Fort Castle Road, and Captain's Way.
Did you have portions out in there?
So put Captain's Way after Windjammer. And put in full paving, road width paving. Portions of Windjammer and Captain's Way. And all of Spyglass, Clipper, Privateer, forecast.
So more portions of Windjammer Road.
Do we need reference to the map that's been provided?
Or reference the map. It's in the report. Maybe that's better. Say that's pretty.
And that's for the map and stuff.
That's for the map business. The
Do you
date
want
was
to have time frame?
May 26th staff.
Let's get that on the floor and we can discuss the timeframe.
I move that recommendation.
We have it read it for clarity.
Yes, the council approved the use of $250,000 from the roads and infrastructure reserve fund to supplement the use of $500,000 from the road improvements budget for portions of Jammer Road, Captain's Way, and full road width.
No, full road width has to be right in front of Windjammer. So just say from full road worth paving of Windjammer and Captain's Way, Spyglass Road, Clipper Post, as per the map on the May 26th staff report.
So for full road width paving of Windjammer Road, Captain's Way, Spyglass Road, River Place, Privateer Road, and Forecastle Road as outlined in the map, and the same 26, 2025
25 staff.
That's been moved. Seconded by Councilor Lake. Discussion on the motion. The only hesitation I have is regarding the timing and it's been a history of projects that have stretched longer than they should have. And that's my only hesitation in passing this motion and not going to retendering, is that if this stretches into September, October, November, owing to availability of the subcontractor, and it would be a reputational stain on the municipality. I don't know if it's possible within the change order to add some performance-based language for start and completion of this, or whether this should be pending a schedule update of from ND themselves with some contractual language as to when this can be completed. But those are my reservations around this motion. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think these questions around timing, issuing the change order and stuff, it's getting into a realm of contract negotiations, which I think is best discussed in a closed council meeting, given it bears on the contract and the negotiation with it. So you know, if that is the desire of council to keep the discussion going and closed where relates to contract negotiations aspects, that is something that council can do. But I think in this setting here, we're getting into contract negotiations.
I would move into closed meeting under section K of the community charter.
Before we do that.
Yeah.
Can we amend the existing motion so that it's subject to schedule update from the contractor and possible future council discussions in closed? Once we get that information, it might not be mentioned.
Or it could just be subject to schedule update for the contract.
They are required under MMC with every change order by a schedule. That is written into, that is a requirement for MMC.
We don't know what that's gonna be, so
Yeah.
it's subject to whatever that is.
Yeah.
So just something to that timing.
So an amendment to
This motion to add the phrase subject to information received after this schedule update.
Needs to be approved subject or timing, though, like if they just give us a schedule update that says December, we're not. Unless we,
Subject to acceptable timing.
does that address your concerns?
I think so, yeah, subject to acceptable timing by the municipality.
Yeah.
Then acceptable time should be defined.
Completion by.
We should might be in August, I think.
Is that doable? I don't know.
I think, yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It
If
just,
we make it subject to something that is on the outside range of what's acceptable to us, right? Different word, you know, any kind of difficulty. You know, we can live with probably, I mean, ideally it's August, but you know, we can, before the rains really start. We could accommodate, you know, end of September.
So, I mean, we can just get, so if we got an amendment on the floor, we can, yeah, we can discuss that. My view is that it would be the end of August, because if it's gonna be end of October, then why are we not just going to
Okay.
tender?
Right, so then my amendment would be to, subject to, schedule update and, completion by the end of August, 2025.
Second that. discussion on the amendment?
I have a question, because I'm just trying to look at how this operation will play out, so. Tomorrow, I sent an email to Urban Systems and MD, and it says. Council wants to go ahead with this work, but they're wanting to know if it can be done totally by August. And then they respond back with an email or a schedule, and then. I present that to you as a council, and then you provide me to go ahead again to move ahead with contract, or is it basically, it's at that point, it's a staff decision. They said they can get it done by August, and then coming back to get a motion to attend. Is that, I just want to be clear on how that operation is gonna work. Because typically in a change order thing is you give them the authorization to work, they come back with the schedule and you go off and you do the work, right? So there's that added layer of council approval and things. So just how is that in an operation?
So the interpretation I would have, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but because it says subject to end of August, if they can do it at the end of August, that can be enshrined in the change order that satisfies the condition of the motion. If it doesn't, if it's gonna move into the fall, into September or October, or there's gonna be questions about contract availability, I think that it's back at the next council meeting for further discussion.
So again, through the chair, I mean, there's always a degree of certainty in all of this, right? There could be an extenuating circumstance, there could be a plant breakdown, whatever. And so MMCD has those delay mechanisms built into the contract documents. So I think I'm struggling with how we would operationalize that and what would be the consequence for the contractor if they did not. If we got to say the middle of July and we find out BA Blacktop's asphalt plant is down for a year or for some part, and they need that part from Europe and it's gonna take them a month to get that, like, how does that play out?
I think that's a fair question, and I'll say this from the chair with some degree of passion, is that the number of issues that this council has dealt with, where there's a delay in ceramics, there's a delay in contracting, there's a delay in community center completion, there's a delay in something where it's nobody's fault and there's no recourse for that performance, has exhausted my patience. And it's damaged the reputation of the municipality. So in procurement, there's an ability to write in performance-based remedies for completion. And if we're going to approve out of a regular procurement process and out of budget, $750,000 change order that wasn't contemplated at the time of risk management for this project, for design of this project, and has led us to this uncomfortable situation. Okay, to get it done for the summer and to get it done quickly or current pricing, but in exchange for that, it feels fair that there needs to be some sort of guarantee as to the timing of the completion of that project. Otherwise, if the contractor can't guarantee that and BA Blacktop can't say, yeah, absolutely, we'll be on the island, we'll complete this by the end of August, then there's no reason why this shouldn't go to a public procurement process where everybody has a chance to bid on it and it gets completed in the fall. But what I have no appetite for as the mayor of the community is to go back to the community and say, yeah, this is going to get done by August. We don't have any real guarantees that's going to happen. And then for some reason, which again is nobody's fault that nobody can point to, the project doesn't get completed. And those residents are driving up and down a road that's, destroying tires that we have to maintain, that NV has to maintain. So it just feels like, I guess what I'm struggling with is how is it unreasonable to ensure that there's some sort of enforcement of performance that gets this complete by the end of August, when it should be completed.
Okay, in response to Chair on that, so I guess we can look at how we would enshrine that in the contract change orders, as existing mechanisms on other NMCD, they are required to provide a schedule. I believe they are motivated because now that we've given them this change order and they are responsible for the road, they have to maintain it at their own cost until it's actually paved. So it is not in the interest of the contractor whatsoever to have this unpaved for months on end. Now that if we're authorizing this change order, they're responsible for the road. And so that's gonna come out of their profit margin for them to maintain that. So they are motivated, I believe. We should be able to work that into the change order, but I just, and I appreciate your comments on the surrounding filters and Bowen Island, the community center being behind schedule, and I think there is a little bit of inherent uncertainty in contracting sometimes, so and we try our best to resolve those, but the only way you're gonna deal with those is if you have severe penalty clauses in that, but from the contractor's perspective, I would say, like, if we would known these were the severe penalty clauses, then perhaps we would have been the job differently. And if you look at the spread, the bids in this came roughly like from 5 million to NB up to 10 million. So I believe NB to be working with us in good faith on this project, and there's nothing indicating that, I mean, with respect to the other projects you cited, I think this is actually the one that's proceeding more or less on schedule. So I don't believe they have a record of falling behind schedule, but certainly if in discussion with their engineering consultant and their contract administrator under NMCD, if there's a way that we can strengthen that language, we certainly will. But I think in order to move forward, we need clarity on what it is we're actually authorized to the investment, right, vis-a-vis this contract.
So right now, we've got a clock in there that we want to see it done by August.
Yeah.
28th. I mean, is there any, and you're concerned about how you're gonna deal with that with MB? So do we leave that out? And we know perfectly well that that we want it done by the end of August, and if they come back and say, well, we won't get it done in October. I don't know.
From my observation, I think the message is loud. And I think NB is also motivated, given they're in charge of maintaining that road. And they want to move on to their next project and other works, so and they were able to secure a commitment, I believe, through their working relationship with BA Blacktop, because they did a lot of work in the Sunshine Coast to get this agreement with them. So but I do understand I'm stepping into an environment as a new CEO that has a history of projects going a little bit over schedule. So I am sensitive to that, but construction has a little bit of unpredictability sometimes. So, and we put in the mechanisms to try and stay ahead of that. We did that with this community center, always behind schedule, and we used the mechanisms within the CCBC contract language to implore the contractor to step up and get this done on time or get it done faster, and ultimately we got into the building. So we'll use those same mechanisms in MCD to do the same for this contract.
Councilor Big, follow Councilor Big.
So I can go around and round on this. I don't see any benefit to having penalty clauses, or, I mean, I think that would require renegotiating. And if we get to October, I understand from the CAO, there's a good chance it won't get done until next spring. So, and the CAO's advice is they're motivated They've worked with BA Blacktop. I just think we should go ahead, clearly give them the message of what our expectation is. And I don't think we should say the end of August, I think we should say the end of July. Is what, you know, we're expecting.
What does the resolution say now? Just the last little bit.
The amendment.
So the amendment that's been moved and seconded and it's yet to be voted on is subject to a schedule update from the contractor with completion by the end of August 2025.
So what about just saying in council would like to see the project completed by the end of?
But we've got to vote on that amendment before we change it.
Or we can amend I can move to amend the amendment, go for it.
Clear the speakers list first, Councilor Gay.
So we're debating unknowns and what we're trying to do. Seems to me, with this amendment is to try and nail it down so that we narrow the unknowns. And if there's a problem from this well-motivated contractor that they're not gonna be able to do it, we're gonna hear about that. So that delays this discussion. But if they're content with it, then they'll do everything they can. And if the machines break down and there's nobody else that they can borrow it from, or they can't rent the machinery or do whatever in terms of their fallback position, then, you know, we're clear about that too. But it's clear what our needs are and that we want to tie this into a performance date for good and solid reasons. And, you know, you're the new CAO that can negotiate all sorts of things and just say it's this, you know, this council that I've inherited that has no tolerance in that, whatever. So, you know, blame us as the bad guys, but just try it. I think it's we don't really have a lot to lose at this point. I'm just trying to push the point, so. I'm sticking with my amendment.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Carries unanimously. So now we're back up to the main motion. Any further discussion on the main motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries. Councilor Getty.
Motion to adjourn.
And we move to adjourn, seconded. Any further discussion? Not seeing anything in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye.
You have the